Good morning and welcome to the last few days of the public hearings in the online platforms market inquiry. This morning we have two food delivery platforms, Pile Eats first and then Driver Foods, and then our last session will be next Monday in the late afternoon, early evening, where we have Rabosa, the Real Estates Board of South Africa, and then Take a Lot. So let me welcome the co-founder and managing director of Pile Eats, Ms. Ilse Erasmus, and Ilse, I believe your co-founder and sales and marketing director Ryan may join us. But welcome to the public hearings and the virtual stage.
Thank you.
I believe you have a presentation, so I'm going to ask you to share that and take us through that, and then we'll follow that with questions.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I will certainly do. I'll try and quickly share the presentation.
Ilse, I think at the moment you're sharing your file finder, and I don't want everyone to be able to see all of what's on your computer.
Let me quickly just close that. Okay. Are you seeing the presentation now?
No, not yet. Maybe just try share. We're back to view of yourself.
Okay. Oh, yeah. No. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see me now.
We can see you. We just can't see the presentation yet.
Not the presentation yet.
But if you're having difficulties, you can still just talk to the presentation and
sure. Okay.
And then we'll follow that with questions.
Okay, sure. We can do that then rather. Just for the safety of time. Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it that we can actually be part of this platform. So basically, Pile Eats was the reason or how it originated was there was a lack in the area, in the Pile East area where we resided at the time last year. During COVID, and of course there were no other delivery platforms that delivered in that area, and that's how Pile Eats started. So we online food delivering company that started in June 2020. So we're just over a year old, so fairly new still. As mentioned, the main members are myself, Ilse Erasmus, and then Ryan Peterson, who is the sales and marketing director as well. So mainly what Pile Eats, where Pile Eats deliver, they deliver to the full community, so there's no exclusions. And we deliver up until 16-kilometer radius from Central Paarl up until Wellington, and then all the areas in between. We are quite small, but we see growth monthly, I can say. So we have a staff complement of 7 drivers at the moment, 3 full-time and then 4 part-time drivers. All right. So basically, how our platform works, or what platforms that we can use. We use a smartphone app, so it's on iStore, Play Store, Hawaii, and then also we have a website as well, where the customers can order the food from. We use a local hosting company, so Afro Host at the moment. Okay. All right.
Can I just ask Ryan if you just mute yourself because it's giving feedback to Ilse? Thank you.
Oh,
Go ahead, Ilse. Welcome, Ryan.
All right, sure. Thank you. All right, so basically, like I said, we're using a local hosting company, AfroHost, and the platform is set up to display menus, prices, and accepting payments as well. And the payment methods that we make use of would be cash, card payments, and also payments on delivery, and then also online payments. We use local for all online and pay on delivery payments. And then our main clientele are mainly food restaurants. All right. So to get the restaurants on board, because we of course we're fairly new, and which was of course also one of the challenges, is that to get them on board, we keep our fee structure very low. So there's no joining fees involved at the moment, and we take about 15% commission from the restaurants as well. We supply the restaurants with a device to accept their orders, and yeah, we employ our own drivers, of course. We have in the past made use of other resources as well that didn't work so well, so we have decided that we would employ our own drivers to do the deliveries, because we customer focused, and we keep our we like to keep our customers happy, and would like to give them the best service. Okay, we take responsibility for the order from the start to completion of the order, and we also are responsible for the full payment as well. Okay, so in terms of our customer data, due to our policy, customer data is limited. The restaurants receive customer data per order, of course, for them to also have access to that. So if anything, if there's any need to contact the customer, then they have that access to that as well. The customer base are also used for internal marketing. So, for example, push notifications that we will send out, and so on. Okay. So, currently, with the price clauses, there's currently no restrictions, and we encourage restaurants to provide the menu price with the added commission on the menu. And for some restaurants that do follow that structure, it's in our advantage as well as for the restaurants as well. So the customers would prefer to, of course, go and use those restaurants as well, because it's a reasonable price as well that the customer pay. Unfortunately, for the larger companies and larger food chains, there's a fixed price for the third-party suppliers. So that is something that we have to follow, of course. All right. Then just in terms of the ranking and consumer search on the platform, we employ a ranking system where they can search the restaurants closest to the customer, a customer's geolocation, um, restaurants mainly used by the customer, and the rating system. So, how the customer rates the system, customers would like to obviously look at that as well. And then customers have the option of searching nearby restaurants, like I said, highly rated restaurants by cuisine, by name, or by promotional banner that we put up from time to time for the restaurants as well. Okay. So the challenges faced in the market is, I think the biggest one for us is the buy-in from big corporate restaurants. Because we're such a small local company, that it's quite a challenge to obviously get buy-in from the restaurants, the big ones. And then digital resources like the free device data, um, and then marketing capital, because obviously, you have to market. We have to market our company out there. We have to market the restaurants, and that is also quite a challenge as well. And then driver employment. The turnover rate is quite high in that regard as well. Um, Although we have our regular drivers that that's quite loyal as well. Okay, just in terms of SMEs and the historically disadvantaged support. The main support of for SMEs, and that is one of the reasons that we started this platform. It was actually we started to say that, or we went to our local restaurants around here, and we asked them to join the platform. Unfortunately, not all of them, bought into that. I think it was quite a mindset adjustment for them because of the service that's now open to them. But I mean, we go with it's an ongoing thing that we're doing, engaging with them to open the platform for them as well. Um, yeah, so like I said, we are hosting a few local businesses, and they are very happy with our service at the moment. And then supporting businesses in the area, as I said, that has that the in the disadvantaged areas as well. That is also our main focus. Okay. Competition issues. Mainly to get in with the larger companies, like I said, the big corporates. It's quite a challenge to get in there, because obviously they have their own rules and regulations in terms of that. And then also the competition remedy. Uh, we would say that to set up a database where small suppliers can register, so our local small suppliers, maybe if there's a database, if we can register and have access to that, or a process that we can follow, of course, so that they are aware of the smaller local delivery companies. And then also create a ranking system for the SMEs for consideration by the larger companies. So those that already is making use of us, just to have that type of ranking system available, we would say. Okay. Yeah, and that that is it from us. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Asa and Ryan, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and for the presentation. I just, I mean, the presentation covered a lot of the questions we had, and thank you for that. It was quite helpful. So I'm just going to engage with you on the areas that we require a bit of clarity. The first one I wanted to understand is these areas that you're saying were not serviced at the time that you decided to go into. I'm assuming the bigger food delivery platforms were not there yet when you entered. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure. I think if probably way back, like, and I'm talking about a couple of years ago, I think some of the bigger companies service those areas, and I think it's because of they probably have their own reasons, and obviously those areas, it's sometimes not that safe to obviously enter the areas, but because we
So
recruit. Okay.
can you hear me? Is my
Yes,
thing
Ryan.
off mute? Oh, sorry. It's okay. No, I just want to answer that question for quickly. The thing is, it's a bad loop that consumers are caught in, where the company like Mr. Delivery, Uber Eats don't service the area. Customer isn't aware that they can order because they just assume that because that's what we're dealing with. Because when we tell customers, but we deliver in your area, they said we never knew that. Understand? Because they trapped in that loop where okay, the big guys don't deliver, so you guys also don't deliver in our area. So they don't make use of the ordering platform, which in turn loops back to that the service providers don't cover these areas because people aren't ordering in these areas. Plus, I think it's a big safety issue where companies drive. The thing is that because we employ local people, our own people in the area, because unfortunately at the moment, Mr. Delivery and them, they have a lot of outer people that are not from the area itself, which causes us a safety issue, stuff like that. And I think Mr. Delivery has limited their delivery to 5 kilometers only, regardless of the area. They only go up to about 5 kilometers in the radius, and obviously I'm gonna say the previously disadvantaged areas they completely don't cover. I've tried ordering from an area already, and it'll just pop up a message: we don't service this area at this moment. I think if more people start inquiring and doing that, I'm thinking that they will actually pick up from us to see, look at there is a market in these areas, because we obviously supplying to these areas. We're getting orders from these areas, from these people, which they assume won't order takeaways online because a lot of people are very tight with the budget, tight with money. So they have to add extra 15 or 20 rand on top of an order to get it there. They'll rather look at get in my car, drive down. But I think once Mr. Delivery and the big guys see, look here, there is actually a market there because we just branched out to Wellington. And Wellington is one of the areas where Mr. Delivery just refuses to do deliveries because they're too small. So we're starting there, and I promise once it starts getting and growing there, we'll probably see that changing as well. I hope that answers the question.
It does, Ryan. Thank you very much. So
Okay.
just so I understand, so they in respect of these underserviced areas, for whatever reason, whether the market is too small or the areas are viewed as unsafe, the bigger food delivery platforms have not entered those markets.
Definitely.
That's okay. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
that's a definite.
But then you are operating even just beyond the areas that are regarded as underserviced, or the ones that you're calling as underserviced. So are they in the other areas where either Mr. D or Uber Eats are there as well? Are you with them in those areas?
Yeah, no. We cover basically all areas because we definitely have our own range. Because Mr. Delivery only does the 5 kilometer, we actually getting at that advantage where if we deliver up to 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, we actually get that extra customers that never ordered before because there wasn't that access for them. Because a lot of our customers as well are on estates, are on farms, which are quite outlying in our area. So to get food to them as well, I say basically the market is just a little bit further than 5 kilometers than what the current people are doing.
Thank you to you both. with regards to the areas where either Mr. D or Uber Eats are there, how are how's the competition for you? Are you still finding that consumers are still ordering on your app? What has been your experience there?
If I can just say, yes, we have those consumers that obviously that have tried Mr. D or Uber Eats, and then they will try and order on our platform. I think that the challenge there for us mainly is to keep the service up to standard. And see what is it that sets us apart, why they would rather order from us than Mr. D, where they service the same area. That with that being said, I think the other thing as well, excluding the big corporates that obviously have the same pricing, and that the same pricing that we have to use. We have those other restaurants that that's perhaps not with Mr. D, or it could be those restaurants that are with Mr. D, but because we have this good relationship with the restaurant, we obviously compromise on the pricing on the app as well to make it affordable for the consumer.
Thank you, Elsa. In fact, it leads me to another line of questions, and I just wanted to understand. You spoke about menu pricing and commission. I did not understand what you were saying. The restaurants, how the restaurants, whether the restaurants in fact absorb the commission that you charge them, or whether that is included within the menu pricing. Could you just explain that part to me?
Okay. Ryan, do you want to
Okay,
take this?
there are certain restaurants that deal with us. There are the ones, because our commission is so low. Our commission's only about 15%. There are, I think, the Kelder. Sorry, I'm not allowed to mention, but there are restaurants that absorb the complete commission, where they allow us, look here, this is our menu price. This is the price that we want on the app. So we go straight up. We love those restaurants. We try to market them as much as possible. Where they absorb the commission price. They give us our menu price and they absorb the commission price. Then you have the restaurants that add the commission price to their menu price. So that still comes in under Mr. Delivery prices sometimes, where they will give us our menu and say, okay, you can add your commission on top. Then that will be the price on the app. Then you have your larger corporates like Spur, Panarottis. Those people have set prices for all platforms. And then that will be the price on that platform. So there's no wiggle room with those ones. Like Ilse also said, some restaurants aren't on Mr. Delivery, so they're making use of our service instead of Mr. Delivery, due to the price being so low, our commission. That's why we ask them as well, look here, can we wiggle around with the prices? And if they're happy to do that, we're happy to help them as well. Because we're trying to be competitive in this market. There's not a lot of people in this market, and the people that are in the market are quite big. They got heavy names, big names, and we're trying to just crack at that a little bit at a time.
So the ones that are not on Mr. D or Uber Eats, the one that you try and wiggle the price, do you mean you for them to absorb the price of the commission, or to include the price of the commission in their menu price?
That will be the discussion with them, yes.
Okay.
We will offer them those options. Majority will just go a percentage. There are restaurants that say, okay, increase the price by 5% on the app,
Okay.
so that their commission, so that their profit doesn't get decreased too much. Most of them will say, okay, put it up by that commission amount, and then deduct the commission and pay us out, so they get their menu amount paid out to them. And there are some nicer big restaurants that will say, like the one I mentioned, where they're on Mr. Delivery, but they're giving us their menu prices. So they have the Mr. Delivery obviously adds their commission and stuff, but we're taking their menu price, where they absorb the commission. Those are the three that we working around with at the moment. Because at the end of the day, is we're trying to provide a service to the customer as well, and we know all customers look at pricing. All customers do check that. We'll see. Okay, look here, it's cheaper here. Let me order here rather. So that gives us a little bit of an advantage. That's why we don't want to increase our commission or service fees or anything at the moment. I think it's probably stay like this for a few years until we've developed a footprint in the area.
So essentially, you saying your competitive advantage is lower commission. Therefore, whether a restaurant absorbs or includes the commission into the menu price, it means the menu price is lower, and as a result, the pricing ultimately to the consumer is lower, and so the consumer still uses your platform. Am I summarizing it correctly?
That's summarized beautifully, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Just so I understand, the commission, is it a flat rate across the board, or do you charge other restaurants differently? Do you vary with your commission?
Uh, yeah, that's a difficult one. When we started out on 13%, on like 12, 13%. The thing is, the restaurants negotiate, and we obviously have to negotiate with them in terms of getting them onto our platform. So certain restaurants will say, okay, let's do 13% for 4 months, 5 months. Then after I see an increase, then we can increase the percentage. There are restaurants that started with us in the beginning, where we kept their percentage on 13% still. We haven't increased their percentage yet. The newer, because we've developed in the year, we've developed quite a name and quite a footprint. We have gone up to 15%, and the restaurants are still happy with that. We want to maximize at 17 to try and get that for everybody, on that. But I think that's going to take a little bit of work to try and get all our restaurants on 17%, because a lot of them are already used to the 13%. So it's going to take some negotiating to get everybody onto the same
Yeah.
same rate.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just mention something there, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go
So,
ahead.
okay. So just with Ryan mentioning the percentage there as well. I mean, we've gone in with the lowest that we could. That obviously where we don't even make a commission at this stage. And because mainly, I mean, if we look at all the expenses that has to be covered from our side as well, you know, that is even a challenge on our side. But we have to almost compromise not to go too high to keep that, you know, that rate, so that we can still, you know, do business, of course, with the restaurants and in the area.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention. Yeah, 3% of our commission goes to Yoko, due to the because we handle transaction fees, everything on behalf of the restaurant. The restaurant has no expense on that. We carry all the expense on us. So the should work out to about 7, even though we're charging 15.
Okay, thank you. So you basically saying of the 15, Pal Eats would get 7, the 3% go to your funder, and then the other is the other costs that the restaurants would
The
have.
fees for the platform.
Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you about that. So you decided to not go the differentiation of the bigger brands and the independents with regard to the commission. Why was that? Because other platforms are doing so. I just wanted to understand what was the rationale for your strategy.
Oh, sorry, let's understand quickly. We didn't charge the bigger brands bigger commission.
Or smaller. So you didn't. So,
Oh.
so some of the
Oh, we didn't.
yeah. Do you understand me? Sorry.
Another, yeah, the strategy was basically go low, get all of them on board. That was our strategy. Because we know these businesses all watch their bottom line. They all look at their finances. So we just wanted to get in. That was our main goal, to get restaurants on board. Because obviously you're a new company, you're marketing to them, you'd have to explain to them, look here, we're going to take your money, then we will pay you out your money in a week's time. So there has to be that trust and stuff. So if it was a big amount, I doubt people would have hesitated with us, because we're dealing with their money. So basically, all the restaurants' money is lying with us, and we need to
Right.
reimburse them.
Uh,
So basically, from the time the food leaves, that's all our responsibility, until they get their money deposited into their account again. That was the basic strategy. Just go low and try and get as much people on as possible. With the big corporates, because we dealt directly with the owners.
okay.
Yes, no.
Okay.
Please
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
think
Elsie. I
right.
think Ryan is
Okay.
has
No,
frozen.
yeah, I think just what I would like to just add on there, with that being said, is that yeah, the apart from the fact that we had to obviously get a foot into the door, I mean, even the bigger corporates that's approaching us now, when we sit down, they still negotiate a lower rate, and as to why, I am not too sure. Probably because they know that we are local and and fairly new, and so they can still do that. And obviously we will compromise, at the stage to obviously just to get them on the platform, and then or usually take it from there. Yeah.
And fair enough. You, as you said, to have the bigger brands on your platform is an important thing, and you want
Yeah.
everyone to be there. I'm just saying we were quite interested because some platforms seem to have had this differentiation. So it was good to see that you guys have gone for a flat rate, and what you're doing is negotiating. It could be that an independent restaurant could have a lower commission, or a chain could have a lower commission. So that's how I understood you, and I'm glad
Yeah.
to hear that. Before I continue, on another issue of the national chains, because you've raised that as another challenge. So Yoko is your funder. Are they still funding you now? Because we've been told by other smaller platforms that funding in this area is a difficulty, and you have been able to obtain some funding from Yoko. Do they still fund you,
Yeah.
or have you had to go elsewhere to
Not
look?
you want to go, Ryan? Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
because mm,
Go ahead.
Oh, you
Ryan.
want me to go? Okay. Yes, no,
Yeah.
Yoko has been great help for us. But the thing is, why they're helping us is because they can see the turnover in our bank account, the amount of sales that we generate per day, the amount of sales per year. Because even I had a look at it, and compared to what we were doing this month last year, it's 100,000 more. So the thing is, they every time our budget goes up, they actually offer us a decrease in the service amount, which is helping a lot. Each percent counts at the moment. So we got a nice rate of 2.7% or 2 point something percent with the Elco, depending on the card transactions. And there's always funding. We've used the funding of Yoko once or twice, and the repayments, their interest rate is really very good. I think the interest rate is 5%, if I'm not mistaken. So it's basically 5% on the repayment amount with them. Um, I think it's the main reason we get along with Yoko so easily, basically because of the turnover.
Thank you, Ryan. So let me understand. So are they? just the service provider who has been supporting you with lower rates, or have they provided some investment funding to you?
It's basically
Oh no.
not.
Go ahead,
Right?
Elsha. Go
No.
ahead.
Okay, sorry. It's yeah. I think if we talk about funding, it was probably obviously not investment. It's almost like a loan type of thing that we obviously, yeah. So it's not investing in the company. We need to obviously pay it back. But they have still been a great help to us. I know that we have been negotiating some um, rates with them as well. If I'm correct, they have actually improved on the rates as well. After this year. When we negotiated with them. But yeah, it's not the investment, it's basically just a loan that they are assisting us with.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So when you say rate, you mean the interest rate they charge you for you
The
to repay?
industry,
Okay. All
yes,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you haven't gone elsewhere to look for funding, as in investment funding?
Not too much actually. Yeah, we haven't. That is actually one thing that I must say that we haven't went into, in exploring all the avenues. We There were here and there that we obviously explored, but we haven't explored obviously all the other avenues. I'm sure there is still that we can have a look into as well. Yeah.
The avenues that you say you have explored, was it public entities, or was it private equity, or venture capitalist kind of um, companies or firms?
Yeah, Ryan, what? I mean, you don't have to
Oh,
mention names.
started.
Excuse me.
No, at the beginning when we started, it was actually because of the requirement for getting the funding was it's very. I'm gonna say you have to have all your T's and dots,
Mm,
I's dotted and T's crossed.
mm,
You have to have your proper business plan. You have to have this form. You have to have projections. That's why we decided, look here, we're gonna use whatever money we have left. I was still employed, so we actually got at the end because we started it during the COVID period. There was the a bit of saving that we could do due to the fact that we weren't very mobile during that period. So we saved up and we put every cent and we tried doing everything ourselves from scratch to reduce the cost. We try not to go into any debt. We tried not, and that is actually why I think we lasting so long because we try to reduce. And if we do, like we did get a loan or we got payment, we try to repay it as fast as possible. That's one thing we want to build on. We want to build this basically as because we got so far now. We're basically building on our own 2 feet now. We're using all our own funds. We're using our money, putting it in, and obviously the business is generating some money to put back into itself. Because we're not really making a profit now for this period, but we hopefully by next year we should be seeing some rewards for pushing in all the money into this business.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Can I just go back? I know I digressed a bit. It is just because you've mentioned Yoko, so I just wanted to clarify that. But thanks for that. The one issue you raised, Elsha, in your presentation as one of your challenges has been national chains, and that it has been difficult for you to just get them onto your platform. We see you have some. So who did you approach, and what has been the responses?
Are we allowed to actually go and mention names?
Uh,
um, yeah.
the thing is because some of them
Yeah,
are
if you are
private.
comfortable,
Oh,
if you are comfortable to mention it,
oh,
that's, yeah, that's entirely up to you. Thank you.
okay. All right. Okay, Ryan, you want to answer that?
I just wanted to explain that the bigger chains that we have on board are privately owned chains. So that means that owners can make final decision as well. Where we use personal relationships. I'll use Spur as an example, where Ilse knew the owner of Spur and got us a meeting via that with the owner. Uh, so basically, what I've done, how we started, I went to all the owners, tried to get meetings. Obviously, sometimes you get managers. Managers don't really carry on the message, but I was persistent and I kept going and tried to get to the owner of the business. They will say, okay, the owner will be in this time or that time. Then I will go back and check up with the owner. And once I get the hold of the owner, owners are quite eager to go ahead. They don't really, because they know the situation already. So they're quite eager to go ahead. Where the bigger chains that you mentioned, like McDonald's, we're definitely trying to get McDonald's and KFC, but they're very difficult to get into.
Yeah.
There isn't a set structure or set platform where you can say, okay, look here, we've sent emails. The best we can get is their customer service, and then they will just respond. Your email will be forwarded to the relevant departments. Um, the thing is, okay, as we also don't know too much about the infrastructure, we can't really say, look here, let's go to this department, let's go to that department. Um, because every time you call in as well, they'll tell you, okay, you need to talk to the regional manager. Then you have to ask, okay, who is the regional manager? Okay, we can't share that information with you. And stuff like that. So basically, what we also do, we leave stuff at the branches for the regional or for the manager to pass on to the regional manager and see. But so far, we haven't had any good response or feedback from that sort of marketing. Because we would like to, the thing is, we've a massive request from McDonald's. There's a thing that opened with us now recently. Was it Nando's, which we
Mm.
also would like to try and get on board. They also privately owned, so I did call into Nando's and they will tell me, okay, look here, you need to find out who the owner or manager is of the branch and then go accordingly. It's like little stuff like that. So to get the big guys on board, it was a struggle. Luckily, like some of them did contact us to ask, look here, how does your platform work? Is your platform open web? I'm going to specifically mention Panarottis. They're also a Spur Corp company, but because they were a different, they just came to us through a different route. Without us having to market or go to them and ask, can we contacted us.
So what was Panarotis the head office, or was it a also a franchisee?
Uh, yeah,
It
they
was
Sorry, I
no.
didn't get that
okay.
right.
Sorry, they contacted Ilse so she can explain.
Ilse?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm not sure. I think they are privately owned, but it's actually nice how they got a hold of us, which actually showed us that we have some sort of um, um, visibility there, because the manager of the branch actually did some research to see what delivery options was here in this area, and that's actually how they contacted us. We came up in the search. We came up. They did a little bit of research on Paul Eats, and then they contacted us. And I mean, that's how the relationship started. So which is quite nice and good from our side. Um, yeah, yeah, that I think that is one of the big corporates that actually came back to us. The others, I know that we've also emailed as well, and that was also not a very good and positive response that we have received as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ilse, for that. Can I just go, I mean, to the customer side, I mean, which is another side that you have to deal with. And as you said in your presentation, Osha, you have to be visible to the customers. The customers need to know that Pal Eats exists. What sort of a strategy did you employ to get yourself known to the customers for them to be able to come to download your platform, to try it, and eventually become loyal users? If you could just share briefly with us.
Sure. Okay, Ryan, you can chip in if you wish to. So basically, the platforms that we
Yeah, no,
currently use, the the platforms that we currently use would be social media. So we are quite visible on Facebook, on Instagram. We try to be visible on TikTok now, on Twitter. All those social media platforms. So that's basically our main marketing focus. In the beginning, we went all out to have the ads that they've put up
no,
in the mall,
I
in the Paul Mall. That obviously didn't work out quite well for us. We've also made
was
use of
talking.
our local radio station to obviously market on that platform there. Um, Recently, what we have done now is we've gone into where we've obviously asked for some nice promotions from the restaurants. So we've now done the flyer side as well of things. On the app itself, it has some promotional banners as well, obviously in terms of marketing. Um, yeah, and then I know that we've been actually in the newspaper a couple of months ago where one of the customers approached us that's working for the local newspaper, that approached us and asked us if she can do an article with us, which was also very nice on that side. So that obviously contributed as well in terms of the marketing. I think I don't know, I'm not sure if I covered everything, but there's quite a lot of work that obviously needs to continuously happen in terms of marketing. Um, just to mention one of the restaurants as well here. Um, I mean, he is very customer focused and focused on his sales and all of that. And we are in such a partnership at the moment where he actually ask us if we come to some conclusion, if we can share those marketing costs on certain platforms, and how we can obviously do what we can do for him in that regard as well. So it's like a nice relationship, win-win situation that we have with that restaurant at the moment, which is quite also very nice on that side. I don't know if Ryan has anything to add, and if I touched on everything there. Is there
Also
anything
try.
else?
Oh,
Mm?
I say we also try to give away free cool drink in the beginning to see if
Oh,
we can
yeah.
get some customers. Uh, that didn't really work out as planned. The thing is how the industry and how our app is actually growing by word of mouth,
Yeah.
and I think that's the best type of marketing out there, because obviously the customer will only how can I advertise you if you got a good service, and that is definitely what we're trying to do. We're trying to give the customer good service so that they can be return customers, because we have our usuals already, we have our regulars, but we want to increase that regular base. And that obviously that the thing is there's certain areas where we deliver where we can't really market. We can't go and put flyers, we can't do posters and stuff, and that is where basically we deliver to a lot of states, and the states are very finicky when it comes to stuff like that. So basically, I've seen growth in one of the states, and that's only word of mouth, where one will tell the other one, and all the customer that's generated out there will be basically word of mouth clientele that we have. We do the basic stuff. We do the radio ads. We do flyers. We do Facebook, Instagram, and that stuff. But honestly, I've seen word of mouth is the better option. Where one customer will tell another customer, why don't you use this app? Oh, why don't you order from these guys? They're cheaper, they're faster, hopefully.
That's good. That's good service to hear
Yeah,
that.
and that's our main goal at the moment.
Yeah.
Until we,
So you saying when it comes to promotion, as I'm assuming the cold drink was one of your promos, because that's how what we have heard is the bigger platforms. That's what they do. Either they reduce the price or free delivery or any of that. And you saying you have tried in some and didn't work, or some have worked.
yeah, the thing is with that, like the flashy promos, they don't really work as intended. The thing is, what we've also been getting a lot is where restaurants. The thing is, they don't really. If you tell them, look here, this is an idea. Here is a special. Can we market and run this special for you? Then they have a look at it and they say, oh no, that looks nice. Yes, go ahead. They don't really, how can I say, for marketing purposes, we have to go and convince them. Look here you go. Run this promotion, or can you do this? Can you do that? Like you also mentioned, one of the restaurants, they're very aggressive for their marketing, and they're willing to assist, where they will give 30% off our whole menu. So obviously that's an advantage we have, where we can say, look here, okay, order on our app, you can get up to 30% off the whole menu from this restaurant, which does help that type of marketing. But like I said, the free cool drinks, okay, maybe we weren't known at the time because we were sitting with our crates of cool drink for months. So, but the thing is, once we started growing, I think it was basically the best marketing was more word of mouth, to get the name out there. But obviously, we want to be more visible this December, where we will try some more outdoors type of marketing, where we will actually set up gazebos, park the delivery bikes, or do something flashy where people drive by and actually just see our brand, see our logo. That's what we will try this December, though.
Um, Thank you so much, Ryan. Ryan, I wanted to ask you. I think there were just two questions, and I'm going to give the technical team and James an opportunity. But I wanted to ask you just these two issues. One is, have you lost some restaurants as a result of competition with Uber, where you would have had the restaurant and the restaurant stop signing in onto your platform because they are now with Uber Eats or a Mr. D? Have you had those incidences where you are in areas where you're competing with Mr. D or Uber Eats?
No.
I must say the competition with Uber Eats and much. I wouldn't say there's much competition because they are still the giants in this field. Where their customers will rather join us as well. So basically, they're running their thing on two platforms. Uh, I would say more than 50% of our restaurants are like that, where they actually are on Uber or on Mr. Delivery, but they're also with us. We haven't lost the restaurants due to the fact that Mr. Delivery, they wanted to go and stay with Mr. Delivery or something like that. A lot of them joined because of the bad, okay, I don't want to say bad services, but because of the incidences, because Mr. Delivery is so large and they have so many drivers, there have been a couple of incidences that were told to us by certain restaurants, and that's what we're trying to avoid, making those same mistakes. So Mr. Delivery, I wouldn't say restaurants. We have lost one restaurant, but that's not because of Mr. Delivery. That was mostly because of he wasn't orders than the app orders. So he would cancel orders randomly and continuously, and we had to ask him, "That's hurting our platform. Sorry."
I think we've lost you there, Ryan, but I think I got the gist of that, Elsha. Is that correct?
Okay,
Thank you.
that's right. That's right.
And on the customer side, you haven't seen reduction in orders for the same reason, have you?
No. Okay. Yeah. No. No. I wouldn't say. Um. Yeah. We can't say that because of that we've lost. We probably have to go and do some research and have a look. Obviously, why certain customers aren't ordering anymore. That's maybe something that we have to do. But not that we are known to that is a reason.
Okay, that's fine. I think I'll leave the rest to James. I think I'm done. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elsha, and thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Ilse and Ryan, I just have a few questions. I mean, one just for clarity, as I understand it, Paarl, at least the center of town, was serviced or is serviced by Uber Eats and Mr. D before you arrived, but they limit to 5K radius and don't service almost your previously disadvantaged areas. And that was the gap that you saw. Is that right? All right.
Yes, that's correct.
So it was people in your community that didn't have a delivery service that you thought there was a gap to fill. And so the restaurants, maybe some of them may be on Uber Eats or Mr. D, but they're seeing you to reach new customers. Is that it?
Yeah.
That's actually our marketing ploy to the restaurants, because we tell them, look, even though you're with these other service providers, we're just giving you an extra revenue stream. Basically, you're going to get money in that you wouldn't have gotten with Uber or Mr. Delivery if it comes through our platform. So basically, we ask them just to look at it as a revenue stream. It's an extra revenue stream for their business. That's our pitch when we go into these type of meetings.
All right, and do most of your sales still come from those communities, or is there a sort of gradual encroachment into the sort of areas of Mr. D and Uber Eats service?
Oh no, generally a lot of our customers are on the outer edges because they're enjoying this new service that's available to them. So I would say about 50%.
Maybe also you should take this up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Like Ryan said, I think that is mainly a thing. It's like a 50-50. You have I know of, if I can say, one or two particular customers, that we have a very good actually relationship with that customer, where I know that they will tell me, or tell us that we would rather want to order from you guys. You've got this restaurant on board. You get the food to us quicker, and so on. So that's one thing that I can say. But then also, like Ryan has mentioned, most of our other customers are on the far end that enjoy the fact that food can be delivered to their door now. So I would say it's a 50-50.
Thanks. And I also just want to confirm, I mean, because you haven't got any, I mean, you're working off your own savings, I assume you have to make this sort of pay for itself, or at least not run up big debts if it's your personal savings. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you charge a lower commission than the big players, but do you charge for delivery as well to the customer in order to balance the books?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, but basically what happens is, I mean, we charge a delivery fee. There's also tips included as well for the drivers. But I mean, that is, we don't make anything off that. We don't make anything off the delivery or the tips. That's basically, that all goes for the drivers. But that's if you how you call it, what you're saying is that's basically how we're balancing the books, that we know that we don't have to still cut into that as well. Obviously, we have a structure with our drivers because we have our loyal drivers. We have obviously infrastructure where we say, okay, there's some incentives in place for our drivers. So we have, some finances that we pay out to the drivers, on a weekly basis coming from our side as well, not only the delivery fee.
Yeah, another thing is we have to be competitive as well with other platforms where they charge a set fee, and we have to match that set fee. But we obviously not paying our driver that set fee. We're paying them above that set fee. So basically, whatever if the order is for that set fee, and we paying the driver above, so that comes from our commission as well. Just to keep the delivery fee competitive as well, because if one company has a 15 rand delivery fee and the other company has a 20 rand delivery fee, they're obviously going to go with a cheaper delivery fee if they're getting the same food from the same place. So we do try and keep the driver rate competitive, but we do pay our drivers more than what the set fee is. But there are certain orders, like the far orders, where they will just get whatever the amount is because it pulls in at a certain amount. So they will just get that amount then.
And then maybe a last question from me is, I mean, the technology platform. I mean, getting an app up and running. How did you go about that process? Did you sort of get a third party to help you?
That was mostly me. Yes, I started off as a website. When we started our marketing to restaurants, we were initially going to be just because the website was the easiest to run, to set up, market, and try and how can I say, get out to people. But then obviously, as we were marketing, I think the first or second restaurant we were marketing, actually asked us, why don't we do an app? And then I'm like, okay, we'll look into it. But because they signed with us, I actually went in and did the research. And initially, we started most of the stuff ourselves. Like the basics I can do myself. The basics, HTML, CSS, that type of coding I could do myself. There were certain issues where I had to get in foreign help because the local help here is too expensive. They're charging up to excess of 1,000 rand an hour for assistance. Where internationally we could get people to help us for a set fee, and they could get that certain feature developed and set up for us. The main issues that we were having were like Spur threw us a curveball by telling us, look here, we need a printer. Unfortunately, our app wasn't set up that way to allow for printer integration, so we had to get a third party. Luckily, I knew some people, so I just made a couple of WhatsApp calls and we got the help. Unfortunately, most of the people that helped me are from India, so they were assisting us greatly. When we decided to put on a payment gateway as well, there's nobody really here in South Africa that will assist for under like 20,000-30,000 rand just for a payment gateway. Where we could have done, we just made a call and then we tried to implement it ourselves. So basically, most of it was ourselves, me and Ilse sitting, working, building this infrastructure, and then a lot of external help and buying a lot of plugins and stuff like that that's used in the app as well. And what else is there? It's basically just the plugins I know we bought, some of the features we had made, and basically the rest we just coded ourselves.
And at the restaurant side, do you give them, or they use their phone, or how does it work that they get notified of an order?
That you also can answer.
Okay, no, they have a device. So we supply each restaurant with a device mainly. Where they would obviously, we will set up the device for them to receive the order as well. So basically, obviously, we have like three platforms that's interlinked: the customer, the restaurant, and then the driver. And that's all is interlinked. So they have a device with that, app on that they receive the orders.
Great. Well, Ilse and Ryan, I just want to thank you for participating in the public hearing. I'm sure it's been educational for the public to hear about a startup such as yourselves. You know, I think someone called it bootstrapping from your own savings. Um, so,
Yeah.
so I do want to thank you for that, and thank you for the insights that you've given the panel and the technical team. And we want to wish you all the best with Parleets and hope that you grow and succeed.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you so much for the opportunity that you have given to us. We appreciate it.
All right. So Ryan and Ilse, you can leave the virtual hearing stage, and we're going to invite in our next participant, which is a food delivery company called Driver.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break whilst we just wait for our next participant to join us, and then we'll resume. All right, welcome back to the public hearings, and we now have Driver Foods, and we've got with us Miss Karen Naidu, who's head of strategy for Driver Foods. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks, James.
Karen, I'm going to ask you to just give an introduction to Driver Foods for those who don't know it, what it does, and then also if you can address some of the reasons why you've wanted to come forward in the public hearings and some of the anything you want to raise before we then run some questioning.
Sure. Thanks, James, for the introduction. So I represent Driver Foods as head of strategy for the company. So Driver Foods was established in 2018, and we are a tech-enabled startup. So we decided to enter into the market, launching in both Durban and Cape Town. And our reason being is that we knew that the food delivery space was a space that had a lot of growth, and that also the market also needed a local player. So at that time, obviously, Uber Eats and Mr. D were in industry and operating within both those markets. But we felt that being a startup, being local, we'd be able to garner the support of the public and take our offering out. So we had launched, we had a very big PR spin for Driver to launch it to the market. And for the first few months, we were successful in running our company. Thereafter, we really went through quite a lot of difficulties. And I think the main difficulties that we did have surrounded, one, the workforce, and two, the competition. So if I can just talk to both of those points. So as you know, your labor force are your backbone to your business, and given the fact that we had employed, so our model is a bit different, where we also own our motorbikes. So we invested heavily infrastructurally into the company. So we own the motorbikes, and we had employed drivers. And what we had found within the first 6 months is that a lot of the drivers were being poached. So I mean, all the drivers would meet at a specific area in and around, if I use Durban for an example, they'd meet in and around Umhlanga. And all the other companies' drivers would also be there. And what started happening is that the ops managers of certain certain competitors of ours would tell the drivers to offer our drivers higher salaries. And so there was a lot of driver poaching just by that alone. So we found ourselves in a very peculiar predicament, because our drivers used to get poached, and the guys used to just leave within 2 to 3 days. They'd say, hey, listen, we no longer want to work for Driver. We're moving on to XYZ, whether it's Mr. D, Uber Eats, and they left. So we were left in that predicament where we'd have orders, but we wouldn't have drivers to fulfill the orders. So it became, very detrimental to our brand image that we were not being able to deliver our orders in time, because the drivers would just up and leave. And it was something that was immediate, dealing with drivers on that level. They're just happy to park their bike off and walk away to earn more money with another company. So it really hurt our brand and our credibility that way. And it's not like we're in a position to just employ another driver on the exact same day. It would take a few days before we get new drivers and so on. But then it was a domino effect, because there was no drivers, we couldn't fulfill orders, so people lost confidence in the business. The second thing that I wanted to also speak to is the deep discounting. So Uber Eats and Mr. D are backed by some of the biggest funders, being Naspers and Uber International. So we know that they have very deep pockets. And being a startup, money is something that we have to be very aware of as to how we spend it and how we allocate it. So, Mr. D and Uber Eats has the ability to deep discount. They can offer promotions of 20-30%, and it will be on a weekly basis, and we cannot compete with that. on a weekly basis because it just affects our bottom line and our margins. So that was something that we had really struggled with as well. And obviously, they have large marketing budgets and they part of bigger conglomerates, whereas we are a self-funded startup. So yeah, it was a bit difficult. And I think also what's happened is that they try to sign exclusive contracts with the bigger franchises, so to the likes of your KFC, McDonald's. So it makes it really, really difficult for any SMME or startup to get those relationships. And from a customer perspective, I mean, between pizza and KFC and McDonald's, those three are some of the biggest names that do get ordered off the platforms. And with us being blocked from being able to sign them on as clients, that's hurt our revenue as well. So I think that in terms of those 3 points alone, it's really hurt our business, and the traction that we had seen initially has been lost, unfortunately, and it does not give startups the platform to thrive in this environment.
Good morning, Ms. Naidu, and welcome, and thank you for your presentation. We appreciate you coming to speak to us.
Okay, thank you so much.
As James said, my name is Doris Tsepe, and I'm happy for you to call me Doris. I'm just going to ask you follow-up questions both based on what you've just said to us. I just want us to talk about your engagement with the national chains. That's where I'll start, if you don't mind. So you're saying you engaged with a number of them, and they did not agree to be on your platform. Can you just tell us a little bit more on that? Was this were you trying to get these national chains at the headquarters, or were you trying to engage directly with the franchisees? And what were the sort of reasons they were saying to you? And also expand a bit on the exclusivity. Were you being told directly by these national brands that they have exclusive contracts with who? If you could just, I know I've asked many questions, but I just want you to just expand a little bit on those.
Sure, Doris. So it's a combination of both, being both approaching franchisees and approaching head office. So a lot of the time what would happen is we'd go into the store, we'd ask to speak to store manager, then from there we'd start having conversations with the franchisees. So a lot of the franchisees, the feedback that we got is that head office has to approve who the brand is associated with. And it was said to us in just that they've chosen to go with Mr. D and Uber Eats because they are the biggest players in the market, and that is the preference to which head office wants to be dealing with. So, we had tried to approach them on multiple angles to say support local, we're a startup, we're accessing different markets. Because, for example, Uber and Mr. D, they service only certain radiuses around from the store. So we tried to go a bit further out, and they just would not sign up to us. They just said that they have their agreements already in place. So they would not consider even taking us on board.
Just with the exclusive arrangement, I'll call that
Yes.
for now. Were they explaining why they only deal with two, and why they can't include a third person? Could that be a technological barriers or anything? Did they explain? I'm just
No, so
trying
it
to
was. Sorry, Doris. So it wasn't about any integration problems or anything on the tech side of things. It was purely because they felt that their agreements ran parallel to head office. So as a franchisee, you still have to go back to head office for approvals. And they basically said to us, head office's mandate is to use Mr. D and Uber Eats, and that's it. They're not taking on a third um, service provider, and they wouldn't look at, even because we said, okay, what if you give us certain promotions or certain lines? They just wouldn't, because everything ran through Mr. D and Uber Eats. It does not go to any startups, whether it's ordering, whether it's driver foods. There's so many competitors in the market, and we are not allowed to. And you know, we used to use the example of Pick and Pay and Checkers. We said if Pick and Pay is in a mall, it doesn't mean the Checkers can't be in a mall. So you can have different service providers offering the same thing. I mean, Tiger Brands, for example, supplies so many different stores with their products. So why not bring us on board as a third service provider to take your offering out into market? And it was met with a lot of resistance, and they had said that they already have their agreement signed with Uber Eats and Mr. D. And it wasn't even to say that, okay, when the contract between them expires, we'd consider you. It was just shut down completely.
Thank you, Ms. Naidu. Can I ask, I seem to recall that you said that there are some of the national brands, but the franchisees where you did have contracts with, were they, did they also have Mr. D and Uber Eats on their platform? Even those
Yes,
they did,
yes.
and
For example, Machachos was a client of ours, and they are on Mr. D, Uber Eats, Driver, I think as of late on Deliver or Order In. So a lot of the smaller chains and a lot of the mom and pop owned restaurants, they're not precious about who they use, um, because to them, the more that they can get their product out into the market with different service providers, the better for them.
so would that have been for them the reason to use you is they would be reaching another segment of the market that they may not necessarily get with Uber Eats, or was there some competitive advantage that you would have introduced as driver foods?
So our commission structure was more favorable as well than Mr. D and Uber Eats, because they charge between 20 to 30%. I think it's usually 22 or 25 if I recall correctly. So our commission structure was much less than that. We said that, being a startup, we got to go into the market, we've got to be competitive, we've got to sign on clients. So um, it just it just didn't make sense as to why they wouldn't even pilot one store with us.
But the others did, and
Yes.
yes, and it would have been on you selling the less commission with them.
Yes, so yes, and also our model was a bit different in terms of we did not restrict our deliveries to a certain radius. So we worked on a dynamic pricing principle. So that means that if you wanted to order something from Shlanga, for example, but you lived in um, an area called Stanger or Tongaat, or if you lived in Chatsworth and you wanted to order something from Morningside, we would be able to deliver it to you based on a dynamic delivery pricing model. So we'd pass that cost on to the customer, and we wouldn't just work within a radius costing model like how Uber Eats does that.
Thank you, and that would actually be an increase of revenue stream for those.
Absolutely.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. I mean, it comes a bit to delivery, and I'll come to drivers just now. The restaurants that you tried to sign up, did most of them or some of them have delivery services?
So I mean, we have a lot of clients on board, and some of them did have their own delivery service, but then they've also moved away from that, just based on the capex perspective, so that a store doesn't need to go and buy their own vehicles, they don't need to buy their bikes, they don't need to source drivers. So we are that bridge where if you want to offer delivery service, we do it, and it saves the store money. So it's a bit of a win-win on that point. But a lot of the stores that we had also were on other platforms.
Just those who had, I mean, so you're saying some had delivery services and have since moved away from that.
The traditional format of it,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And presumably it's because they see value in a platform
Yes.
provide.
And it's a cost aspect for them as well. So, from a capex perspective, they'd have to outlay to purchase vehicles or get the vehicles on purchase hire. Then they'd have to pay for their drivers and uniforms for drivers and bags and putting on bins onto the bike. So there's a lot of cost aspect to it. So assigning onto a platform is so much more efficient for them because we're a specialist as such, where we do all of the training for the drivers, ensuring that they're compliant, they follow their COVID protocols. So yeah, I mean it's dealing with a holistic service instead of incurring those capex costs just themselves.
Thank you, Ms. Nadine. You mentioned the one other strategy being a less commission fee. And just so I understand, would in this less commission fee be a differentiation on the structure between independent restaurants and your bigger chains?
So initially, it was something that we did consider, um, and then we decided to take the approach that if you have more than, say, 10 stores, then there'd be a rebate given, but all the commission is the same. From a pricing perspective and from a competition, just to be fair, all the comms are the same, and we find that because, for example, the more stores that you have, the more business you're bringing to us, so we'd offer the client a rebate.
Thank you so much, Ms. Naidu. I just wanted to ask, just from that lower commission strategy, I mean, the other, the bigger food delivery platforms, I mean, they charge a maximum of 30%, for example. Do you think it's sustainable to be in the market as a platform and charging the sort of lower rates that you're talking about?
Yes, so we were very cognizant of that. And when we ran the numbers, obviously, there's comms and then there's also delivery fees. So the delivery fees are to the drivers, that's how they get paid. And our comms is for the running of our company. So we don't have exorbitant marketing budgets at this point. We believe that we could scale the business and run a business based on volume. So you either have there's two pricing strategies. It's either high price, low volume, or high volume, lower price. So we decided to go with that strategy from a pricing perspective.
And in your mind, that could mean there is sustainability provided you get
The volume.
the volumes that you require, which takes me to the next conversation, which is the customer side, because that volume would be coming from them. And I just wanted to understand from you. I mean, you say you didn't have an exorbitant marketing budget, but how did you try to get the customers onto your platform?
Okay, so when I say we don't have an exorbitant marketing budget, so for example, with the likes of Mr. D and Uber Eats, content creation is something that's important to them. They run TV adverts, and so on. So that's a strategy that we don't deploy. So just to clarify that. So when we launched Driver, we had very big PR campaigns. We did a lot of outreaches to a lot of the franchises, restaurants, chains, so on. So initially, that's how we launched the business. And as I said, you were quite successful during that time, the first few months when we launched, and there was a lot of PR, and we had a lot of restaurant chains sign up to us. From the customer's perspective, we had social media. So we ran a lot of our promotions on social media, push notifications through the app, and just general awareness. We'd also have in-store marketing initiatives. So we'd go into store and we'd put up our branding on and hand out flyers as well. We used to run competitions to give away free meals on social media by getting the users and the audience to start engaging with us by posting like what their favorite food is, or tell us about your favorite driver experience and how that's made your day a bit better. So that's how we really approach the marketing side of things.
You mentioned one of the challenges that you were speaking about as deep pockets of the larger players who make it difficult to compete for consumers. I just wanted to understand when you entered in 2018. Did the larger players, for example, increase promotions in the areas that you were servicing? And if they did, what evidence do you have of that?
So I cannot say that they increased their promotions, but I can say that the frequency of the discounting we started to see that, and I can't say that because this would be me speculating. I cannot say that it's because that there were newer entrants into the market, but I do believe that maybe that was a part of their marketing strategy. But it is something that is not sustainable, because to your point asking me about the comms, so if we offer lesser comms, how are we going to be sustainable? But also, if they keep discounting and offering 20% off your KFC every second day, that's also not sustainable, because that they're filling in on that margin and that break, and we can't compete on those days. And we'd see the frequency from Thursday right throughout the weekend. It's either Spur that's 20% off a KFC or McDonald's, or get free delivery, and that's how the whole weekend would go by, where a lot of the business would start being moved to them, because for us to offer free delivery, we've got to pay the driver that amount. We've got to substitute their earnings with our revenue, and that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, look, I mean, the bigger platform says, but that's good. It benefits the consumers. When there are promotions, they then are accessing.
And I agree, and that's why I say to you, it's one of their marketing strategies. I cannot speculate to say that, they did this out of malice. That's something that promotion gets pushed onto the customer, and it is great for them that the customer can have that, but it is not sustainable. If I have to use a retail store, for example, Checkers, they'd have month-end specials or they have weekly specials, but it's always on the bigger guys. So it's always on the KFCs and things like that. It will never be on like a Afro's chicken, for example. So they know who their biggest clients are in terms of revenue contributors. They know who the customers want, and there's nothing wrong with it by offering the discounts. It does get passed on to the customer, and it's great, but it's just the frequency of which, and we cannot compete with free delivery that's being offered on a consistent basis and consistent slashing of prices.
Yeah, look, I mean, the question is in the long term, is it beneficial to the consumer? At some point, the bigger platforms, the deep pockets need to get the money back somehow, and you saying you think it's fine, or there's something you think we can do as an inquiry to deal with that?
I think that it depends on their marketing strategy, and if they happy to run at a loss, with a conglomerate, one division runs at a loss, it's fine because they're overall still profitable. And we know this, that with tech companies run at a loss for many years before they start generating revenue. But yeah, whether it's sustainable or not, they would only know that in their model.
Thanks, Mr. Idu. I think I'm coming to the last two areas that I just wanted to discuss with you, and one of the first ones, or one of the first issues you raised was the difficulty retaining drivers,
Yes.
and the issue of poaching. Before I get to the issue of poaching, I wanted to ask you, um, when at the point at which you hire your drivers, I wanted to understand what sort of investments do you make into these drivers, in terms of training, and you did speak of the investment of owning the motorbikes. Can you just tell us a bit on that?
Sure. So we own our own motorbikes, and so we have to train our drivers and ensure that they have the correct licenses and can drive the bikes properly. So we had a fleet manager who would oversee all of the drivers and the fleet, and then we'd have an operations manager who would ensure that the drivers are delivering the orders on time. So in terms of the driver and the onboarding process, obviously we'd have to vet the driver, ensure there's no criminal records. We'd give the driver training in terms of how to approach the customer, how to speak to the customer, how to do a COVID delivery, how to wipe down the bikes, ensure like the highest hygiene standards have been followed. And so they'd go for their training, and thereafter we'd provide uniforms to them in the form of like a golf shirt and yeah, the helmet as well, and that would be the costs associated with the driver.
Just on the issue of poaching, I mean, can you just tell us, I mean, in your mind, is this active poaching, or is,
Yeah.
in a sense of, and you have evidence of that happening?
Yes.
Do you mind telling us a bit more on that?
Sure. So, for example, one of the drivers was very forthcoming. Some drivers just left without saying anything, but one of the drivers were very forthcoming. Obviously, trying to perhaps use that as a negotiation card with us, but he was very clear to say, listen, we were all sitting under the tree, under the spot in Amshlanga. The guys were chatting to me, and we all started speaking about salaries. And they said to him, come join us, and this is what we'd be able to offer you. And this is directives that was given from the, at that point, I do believe that they had their ops manager overseeing those drivers from the other competitors, and they would say to them, because it's the easiest way to find a steady stream of labor. It's easier than advertising, going and conducting interviews. So our drivers are just being poached. And being a startup, we didn't have the same amount of traction as that of Uber Eats and Mr. D. So obviously they were able to offer them higher salary packages. And then it became such a contentious issue for us that we actually had to start offering base salaries and like have like a commission structure and provide a base just to keep drivers, which is not traditional in the market, because usually in the market with platforms, they all just work on commission.
I don't know if you would know this, but do you know if with the other platforms, I mean, it could be there's a bigger salary on the face of it, but because more volumes, obviously, as you say, they gain more traction. So the more volumes they would get more income. But once you have like other costs like petrol, wear and tear, those kind of things, that do they come still at a higher salary with the other platforms? Do you know?
I
You
would
wouldn't
not
know
know.
that. Okay. And in your mind, what do you think the inquiry should be doing about this issue of poaching? Because I just wanted to say, a driver would say, look, isn't it not fair when I want to earn more money? And if when I go to another platform, I get a bigger salary. So
It is, but it's just the manner in which it's done. So, there's a directive that's been given to say, hey, you know what, it's easier to just poach drivers that are existing within the market so that we don't need to go through interview processes and actively go out and find. So they're saving on an HR cost by getting their staff to just poach drivers and offer them higher packages because it's just convenience. And I think that being a smaller operator and being a startup, um, if we don't speak up about it, it's never going to change. And I think that a lot of these tactics uh, have been put in place, and people just thought that we would not find out about it.
thank you, Miss Nadia. I appreciate that. The last issue I wanted to discuss with you is just on the future of driver. Um, and just to understand, our understanding is, and correct us if we're wrong, that you have stopped operating in Durban. You have.
We've had to switch the platform off. It we had to switch our platform off, which is unfortunate, but we were actually starting to run at a loss. Because as I said to you, we'd have to provide drivers with the base salary just to keep them on board, whilst we regain traction um, within the market. Because obviously, with drivers leaving us so often, it became such a problem where we couldn't deliver people's orders on time. I mean, there was a case where at one point the CEO was doing deliveries just to try and get the orders out. So, based on that, we had taken a decision to put the app on hold and just put it offline for now until we can perhaps raise funding through the form of a venture capital firm, or raise funds that way to support us in relaunching and being able to offer drivers some salaries, higher salaries, to compete with the bigger players in the market.
And how is that process of going? We heard from most small players who are trying to get funding that they are struggling, I mean, to get money. Have you been able to?
So, exactly what you said. So, it is a struggle because the venture capitalist firms want to see traction. They want to see you have between 20 to 30,000 USD in revenue per month, and that's the only time they look at you to invest. Now, when the company's taken a dip, they're not going to understand all of the local factors that have come into play as such. So they just concerned about bottom line and top revenue numbers. So it has been extremely, extremely difficult that way. And there's not many grants available either. to support SMEs or startups within this space specifically, whether it's DTI with tech funding and support programs. The application process is very onerous, and there's a lot of red tape that's involved in it. So we unfortunately have not been successful with it, and that is why we are still offline, even though we put millions behind the business.
So I'm assuming just the mention of the DTI and some of the funds that you have tried to approach even the public funding entities, and you were not
So
successful.
majority of the funding initiatives were private based. However, we did look into certain grants that the DTI does offer, but we don't fit within their spec. For example, they'd want an app that's I think it's called the tech support program, if I remember correctly, but they want apps that are in the process of being developed, not have been developed. So that's where they'd fund programs that are up and coming, not programs that are already established.
My last question to you, just on this and the future of Driver, is: do you think there is scope for smaller players and the larger players in this market?
It's very difficult. I mean, we came up with a new strategy in which to compete with the bigger players. So it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to launch. We created a whole new expansion plan to move into Johannesburg markets, as we felt that our new offering was better suited. But there again, it all comes down to the lack of funds and not having big investors and deep pockets.
Ms. Naidu, thank you so much for your time for me. That's all for me for now.
Thank you.
I'm just going to hand over to James and maybe the technical team if they have more questions. Thanks. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and all the best.
Thank you, Doris.
Thanks, Doris. Karen, I just want to ask, I mean, in your discussions with venture capitalists, I mean, the fact you're going up against these two big companies, I mean, is that a factor that has come up in discussions around funding you?
Absolutely. So a lot of the conversation comes around how they are heavily capitalized over us. So the VC understands that they are going to have to put a lot of money into the marketing efforts of the company alone just to try and compete. So that it has also been a deterrent, because they know who is backing the two main competitors.
And just in terms of sorry, the public funds, I mean, you talked about red tape, slow, and not fitting in with the spec. I mean, if we had to put in a recommendation around the public side of funding, then what would you say are the important things that the public needs to get right?
So I think that they need to cater for, look, so we were self-funded, and I think that they need to make space for projects that have been self-funded by local entrepreneurs, and where we are housing revenue within South Africa as a tech startup, and to offer support, whether it's through a tech program, whether it's through marketing initiatives, whether it's just a grant given. And I think also a bigger factor would be from the competition space. So if there are international competitors, how can they better support the local startups in being able to compete and sustain themselves, and create that brand awareness and create traction from the customer base by use of the grant, so that we can actually compete with international companies? Because Uber and Mr. D, even though NASPA's may be based here, a lot of the conglomerates' money does sit offshore.
Well, thank you. And and I think we may carry on that conversation with you around what can be done. I think we heard from some of the others, in fact, in the delivery space, that they were also informed that they don't fund online businesses. It's maybe approaching different sort of forms of public funds than yourself. But I think that is all from the panel and the technical team. I do want to thank you for making yourself available and for also rescheduling to allow us to have this engagement. And we do wish Driver all the best. Hopefully you source some funding and get back on your feet again.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to us and on a submission to the inquiry.
Thanks, Ms. Naidu. And with that, we are bringing to a close today's session. We only have one last session in the public hearings, and that's next Monday from 3:30, where we've got Rebossa, and then from 4:30 we have Take a Lot. And then that will close the public hearings at this stage. So thank you very much to our participants today, and with that we'll shut down the public hearings for today.